He's angry about mortgages. It's Angry Mortgage. He's swearing. He's cursing loud. He's old. He's opinionated. And he's been doing this so damn long. This program is about mortgages, and this is mortgage advice, but the advice may not apply to your situation. Contact licensed mortgage professionals for specific recommendations before you make decisions about mortgages. You may not agree with Ron, but if you don't, he thinks you're wrong. Oh, and did we say there is a lot of swearing?
Wow, really special podcast today. Anthony Scilipoti from Veritas. And I've known it, we were saying?
We were saying about 10 years, yeah.
About 10 years? Like, if you want to, look, I will have some people on from the mortgage industry who are wonderful people and really know their mortgage stuff. But I'm really fortunate to have a guy like Anthony who has this incredible company, Veritas, that is doing some of the best analysis. And we're going to actually explain what analysis is in a second. Doing the best analysis in Canada and has had a really deep and intelligent interest in real estate, housing, and mortgages and the banks in Canada for just about forever, right, Anthony?
Yep.
Anthony, introduce yourself. Explain to the audience what you do.
Thanks, Ron. Well, technically, by background, I'm a forensic accountant. Mm-hmm. And the genesis of Veritas started out when I was teaching at York. And now I'm going back to sort of mid-90s. And I was using at the time companies that were cheating on their accounting. Law, Lowen Group, Newcourt.
Lowen Group.
You remember that one, eh?
Yeah. That got into a movie. That was a great movie, actually.
Newcourt Credit.
Yeah. Newcourt. Holy mackerel.
Steve Hudson.
Yeah.
And it was teaching, and one of our students was head of research at a brokerage firm, Mike Palmer. And he said, Anthony, can you talk about these things and write about them? Because no one on Bay Street uses that four-letter word. And it's not the one you like that starts with F, but it's that one that starts with S and doesn't end with T. And it's sell. And so I said, sure. I mean, we do this for fun, teaching, and I love to study the markets and look at companies. So we started writing about companies in 1999, and we hit the ground running with IMAX and TLC, the Laser Center, and Royal Group Technologies. And then we wrote about Nortel. And at the time,
Nortel would have been a gold mine.
It was a gold mine. And we didn't realize what we'd actually hit on, but we said sell Nortel, and it's February of 2000. And the stock was $82 on its way to $126 on its way to bankruptcy some 8 years later. It's very sad. But basically what we did at that time was we set up a business that was going to be paid by the investors that read the research as opposed to the companies that we write about. So what we did was we turned the investment industry research business model on its head.
Because up to that time, the research had been free, right?
Research is generally free.
Yeah.
And it's paid for by the underwritings that most of the capital markets get. Now, they get commission from trading as well, but that's small in percentage. Okay, so it's advisory and underwriting fees that they get paid when they do trades. And the business has grown. Our client base is pension funds, mutual funds. Regulators are our clients as well. We have an exclusive arrangement with RBC Dominion Securities that's been in existence now. It's going to be 24 years. And that means we don't deal with any other banks.
You picked the right bank.
Again, some people have said, how do you make it work for 25 years? And it's about picking the right horses. And you got to be right.
Helps to be right. Yeah.
And we've made a business by helping people avoid big mistakes and avoid blow-ups. And long story short, we also run an asset management arm where we take those ideas and put them into funds. And we also do training, going back to where we started, which is training investors to make better investment decisions.
So that is a terrific story, because it just hit me that the best way to spot something to sell is to figure out if it's bullshit or not.
That's correct.
That's probably, although you never know how long it'll take for everybody to figure it out.
And that's why we called the business Veritas. We were trying to think about what to call it, and we said, well, what do we do? Well, we just tell the truth.
That's it.
And the problem with the truth is that it's painful, and no one likes to hear, that it's going to rain tomorrow when you're preparing for a golf game.
Yeah, I've spent most of my life being, looked down upon for being a truth teller.
That's it.
That's and it's funny. I can tell. I've known this for a long time. For a guy like you, it's important. I mean, this is how you live your life. You live your life by uncovering bullshit and by figuring out how to really look at something properly, as opposed to the commercial spin of things. Okay?
Yep.
But it's kind of a lonely territory.
It is lonely.
It's a lonely territory
because you end up no one wants to hear the negative side.
Bad news is not popular. It's for sure. So the other thing I love about what you do is you believe in real grassroots examination.
Yep.
You go right down to the street.
Yep.
Can you tell a story about the condos? Like how when you first started looking into Toronto condos. Tell that story. It's a great story.
And so always been fascinated by research real estate because real estate is just so integral to our economy, integral to our investment as a result, especially the banks and the financial sector. And so now it's just after the financial crisis. We didn't have any crisis here to speak of.
Like a 10-month blip about
but
that.
Nothing to speak of.
No, nothing major.
And yet the U.S. was imploding. And all of a sudden now it's 2010, 2011, 2012, and the market's really picking up. And condos.
Real estate market's going good, yeah.
Condos, and there's, that's the time they said, look, we have all the most high-rise cranes and so on. Yeah. And we said, okay, you know what? Spoke to some of our big institutional clients and said, why don't I'm going to take you out and we're going to go and buy a condo. So you can imagine what it was like. We went
to go 2010, 2011?
This is 2012, actually.
2012, okay, great.
So we go out and we visit 3 or 4 condo sites, and we posed as buyers. And one of us was going to buy to live in. The other guy was going to buy as an investor. And the other guy was just looking. It was 4 of us. But anyway, eventually we ended up buying it. And what we learned at the time, which was important, is all we needed was a $5,000 check, and we needed a piece of identification where the signature matched the signature that was created on the piece of paper. We needed an ID whose picture matched the individual that was signing.
Gotcha.
And we needed no proof that we could actually afford it. No proof that we were going to be able to close.
No.
And magic. In fact, we signed and they opened champagne. It was amazing. And these were going like, how is this possible? What's going to happen 4 or 5 years from now when this individual needs to close? How are they going to get a mortgage?
Now, was that the only deposit you had to make at that time?
At the time, 5%, and then you had to pay 20% over some time period. Typically,
you had to get to 20.
You had to get to 20. Yeah.
Okay. So, wasn't there one where the sales executive, when you did this a few times? Wasn't there one of the sales executives that told you to hurry the fuck up?
Yeah, because what ended up happening, we ended up asking lots of questions, and after we did this for a few years, and we did this for about 6 years.
Wow.
And every year you have 10 days. There's a cooling off period for everybody should know this. When they buy a condo, you got 10 days. You can give it back, no penalty. Mm-hmm. So we always gave it back. In retrospect, I should have kept them around.
the one in 20, 10, and 12, you should have kept those sons of bitches. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all the way through, except for the 2021, right? In 2021.
Yeah, that's right.
But eventually we ended up taking too long, and one sales guy said to us, listen, either sign or leave.
Get out.
You're taking too long.
Get out. I got other guys who want to buy, right now.
And we've done these sites visits and continued to do them more recently, even in Vancouver and in Calgary. And it's amazing all the things you can learn about what's going on the ground. Because there you're going to see how hard the salespeople push.
Or how confident they are that you can just go on to the next.
My favorite one is about 2016. And 2017, and I went to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And I went at the time to the Concord place that they were building there.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and I'm the only person, Caucasian person around. And
what Anthony's trying to say is they were only Chinese buyers at this place. But I can say that he's gonna stay edited. But I'm gonna say there was all Chinese buyers and Anthony. That was it.
And also all the salespeople. Like me trying to get a salesperson was difficult. So I go and I say I want to buy a condo. And they look at me like, really? Are you really going to afford this thing, sir?
You're not Chinese. You can't afford it.
So I go in and I finally they get someone to help me out. And she tells me about the unit. Listen, she says, we got about 6 or 7 units left. And I say, which ones? How much is a square feet? She's like, look, this is the price. These are the ones available. I said, well, how much is it a foot? She says, I don't know. We can figure it out. She's like, it doesn't matter.
But it's not important. If you don't take it, the next guy will.
Yeah. She was like, this is how much, and at the time it was like $1,500, $1,600 a foot. Yeah. And I said, well, what can I rent them out for? And she looks at me and says, rent them out?
Rent them out?
Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, you don't want those people in there.
She says, by the time this is finished, it's going to be worth a multiple of this.
Yes. And
she wasn't wrong. No. Those units did go up to $3,000 a foot.
Wow.
Okay.
Jesus.
And 2,500. But then what happened? But anyway, it was just that attitude was amazing.
So that's why I love the story. I love the story because it was a person who actually went out and did it, like actually went through the experience. Now, there's lots of people bought condominiums in Canada for the last 20 years. Tons.
That's right.
As witnessed the astronomical amount of cranes where we led the world for a number of years.
Yep.
In building these things. And things are changing a little bit today.
Yeah,
changing a little bit. So I've got my own theories about what's gone wrong and how the future of the Toronto Condo Crash. What if you think about it as a forensic accountant, what do you see as the key factors?
I think it all, as I learned, because we've been cautious. Some might even say bearish since we started the condo mystery shops and have our Great Canadian Real Estate Conference, which we've been holding this year.
I've been honored to be at.
Yeah, you've been part of it, and this year we had our 12th annual, and we've been cautious, bordering on negative, and what I should have listened to when we started them, there was a gentleman who used to be on the CMHC board, and he said to me, the only 2 things that matter in real estate are interest rates and unemployment. And we have seen since 1980, if you really draw a line, the 5-year rate at that time was 18%, and it's gone down to essentially zero.
It was absolutely
in 2020,
zero. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, in 2020, and during that time, asset values levitate.
Soared.
And over that time, there's been periods of unemployment, but those unemployment periods have come back down. And during those times of unemployment, that's when there was pain.
Yep.
We haven't really, since 1990, we really haven't had unemployment that spikes and stays there for a time such that it really takes away the spirit, that animal spirits to buy.
Yep.
And so where I think we are today is we've seen the shock of the rates move higher. Now people will say, yeah, but rates are down, Anthony. Why are you worried about this? Well, the problem is it's not that the rates went up. They were essentially, you were getting mortgages at under 2%, and then those mortgages were coming up for renewal with a 5 handle and a 6 handle.
That's correct.
So it's a multiple move. When it moved to 18%, the rates before that were 10. So you went from 8 or 10 to 18.
Like immediately before that was like 14.
Right.
So it in terms of a percentage, you're right. It's not a bizarre move.
It's
right.
That's the point. It's not it's only 7% compared to 18 or 6 compared to 18. It's not that. It's that it was 1.6 and now
6.2.
6.2. And so that's come off now, obviously in the short term, but the long-term rates haven't come down as much, right? You'll know better than me. 5-year mortgage rates, where are they at now?
5-year mortgage rates dropped as low as 4. So
right.
we were in the summer. We were in the 3.99 was available. For a 5-year fixed, even conventional. This is not high ratio 5-year fixed. This is a conventional 5-year fixed. They bumped up. They've kept bumping. It's not linear, but they've bumped up. We're probably looking at 4 today But there's still some 419 out there. Absolutely. Yeah, unconventional mortgages. But it's a rate that starts with a 4 mainly.
Not a 1. If you were in
Not
2020,
a 1, hell no.
in 2020 or 2021. So finishing my point is the rates have gone up, and that's led to all of the panic from investors.
Yes.
And has led to the owners of current properties. They're stuck like a deer in the headlights, where they're in shock. They don't believe that they can't sell their house overnight. They don't believe that the bid that they got is 10, 20% lower as opposed to 20, 30% higher. And so that's left no transactions taking place.
Very slow.
In the meantime, unemployment is starting to go up. So we've seen the last 24 months, we've gone from 4.4 essentially to 6.8, 6.7 or so. So that's like almost 50% essentially move in higher unemployment in the country. And so I like to tie it this way. If you don't have a job, it doesn't matter what the rates are because you can't make the payment. So if everything right now just tied to unemployment. If unemployment keeps ticking higher, then I think we're gonna see a significant hit here. Because housing or construction, residential construction is like 10% of the Canadian economy.
Yep.
And that only includes those individuals that actually report their construction earnings. I know none of that happens at your house or at my house, but there are a number of people that might hire people to do construction work and renovation at their homes where they don't want to pay the tax. And so I've heard stories that could be another doubling of the number of people working in the industry.
I'll tell you one thing for sure. None of my landscaper, the only thing my landscapers who cut my grass in the summer answer to is hola. Okay, there's there's very limited communication with those. They do a great job, by the way. They really do a terrific job. I'm not sure whether they all are permanent residents. Anyway, there is this kind of amazing price disparity.
Yeah,
and I often come back to the Dutch tulip bubble because it has some qualities that resemble the Dutch tulip bubble. We had an environment where many people, because you pointed out, you should have bought the damn condo.
I should have bought the damn
2010
condo.
and 2012 and all those years. You effectively doubled. In some cases, it doubled in 5 years.
Yep.
You could sell it by assignment. Rents went up. You could rent it out at a good profit. The value had significantly increased. But is it not true that was also laying a trap for people? Because all those people who did very, very well on condos, when the real explosion of new condos, and just for the audience, the way condos work is you need 6 years. You need to sell them, and you need 6 years to finish, and then the people get mortgages. The condominium corporation is formed, and the builder gets paid off.
When it closes.
Correct. And then the bank gets paid off. The
Correct.
bank who supplied the development financing gets paid off.
Yes.
So in between, and the bank insists on seeing this development, all these units sold. The bank insists on seeing large deposits. And then it'll all start and there might even be mezzanine financing. And you, as a developer, you probably paid for the incredibly expensive work of getting up to the point where the hole was dug and the units were sold. So you've already got millions and millions and millions invested anyway. The bank comes in, gives you the rest of the development money. You complete the building. People go out and get mortgages. Mostly, if you're an investor, you get a mortgage because leverage is how that business works.
100%.
And you now close. You now say, well, I've even got my tenants in because there's interim occupancy. 6 months before closing, and I've got all my tenants in. I got my rent coming in,
which in many cases you're not allowed to do because they write into the contract you're not supposed to rent it during occupancy. But everybody does that.
And yet, okay. So we've got, and finally the building closes. All 300 units. Everybody gets 300 mortgages, and that's it. It's over. And the builder counts their money and leaves, and the bank gets paid off. So that was such a successful formula that somehow the price just kept creeping up significantly. So when you were looking at those houses, what was it? The first round, it was probably 250 a square foot, right?
Well, maybe 300,
maybe 300
ish,
okay,
400, yeah.
Sure, okay. And it was like that kind of number, 300, 400, 500 for quite a while, for a number of years, right? Okay. And then it just started to spiral.
Yes.
And you, in 2019, 2018, we're up to like 800, 900 square foot. Is that fair?
No, it's even or more than
Well,
1,000.
today lots more. Okay.
No, but even at that time, sure, maybe 800, 900. But I thought it were even to
there was some
1,000.
thousands. Okay.
Yep.
In
the hot spots,
and then the sort of real temperature change in the sales, new sales, new construction sales, pre-con sales in 2021 and 22, where we're looking at 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, 1,700 square foot. You saw
Sure,
that.
100%.
That was there. Okay.
even 2,000 a foot.
2,000
If you
a foot.
look at the
Luxury buildings,
the luxury
yeah,
buildings,
yeah, yeah.
and look at the one, etc.
Well, the one is a story of its own, but because the one is like a story of kind of general insanity. I always found it amazing that no domestic financial institution would touch that. You had
It's
to go
true.
You had to go to a Korean bank that was actually an offshoot of the Korean Wealth Authority. That's all it really was.
It's amazing.
And that story is just preposterous now. Tridal's going to finish it. I guess they're just getting paid by the receiver to finish, right?
Seems like.
Yeah, it looks like it. I guess the receiver's money is coming from the Korean bank, who's just trying to recoup some of the money if they can.
It's going to be amazing to see how those buyers that bought it, how do they close?
I think that's just going to be infinite litigation because
Yep.
there is this. By the way, even though there is, as you've said to me, those contracts really favor the developer enormously. Okay?
They do. You can defer the closing as long as you want.
But I think
There's
they
all
may
hidden
actually
fees.
they may hit a wall at the one on the closing.
They might.
Because
I
it's
don't-
so
I haven't
long.
seen the contract.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, but the real issue today is if you bought a condo for $1,250 a square foot in 2021, and you're going to take delivery next year or 2026, the resale is selling for $925, right? Is that
Something like that.
Something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
You've got a preposterously bad delta
Yep.
that you are if you close, you're closing knowing that you're overpaying significantly
Yep.
versus what you could, because you're just buying one that's 2 years old across the street. That's exactly the same layout, exactly the same style of construction. It's across the street. It's the same place. Okay.
Essentially.
So there's no differentiator between this 900 and 1,275, 1,250. So you know you've taken a hit, and really, the other big thing is rents have fallen a bit
They have.
in both Vancouver and in Toronto. And in terms of falling in the last year, there's actually a slight acceleration in the decline.
Yep.
So you could be coming into an environment where rents are much lower. By the way, that 1,250 a square foot unit,
Yep.
it was always underwater, right? I mean, even when rents were just going hot.
Because it got to a point when the pre-con started, you would buy a pre-con at less than where the current market was, and then which to incentivize the new trades.
Because it made sense.
Because it made sense. And then it got to where the market was. And then it got to, at the end of it, where you were buying way higher than where the current market was.
Because to your point, the salespeople would just look at you and say, what are you, stupid? It's going to go way up, so just sign here or get the fuck out, okay? Like, we just go. Come on. And you've bought before, so you know it's great. So just keep on coming. Now, to me, that's classic Dutch tulip bubble. That is, the tulips will be more, the bulbs will be more expensive because they always have gotten more expensive.
Yes.
And that's the only actual reason. There's no economic reason. Maybe even the demand is slowing down a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Through the whole history of the tulips, 600 years ago, they were always worth more every time, every year, every month.
Yeah, but there's one interesting point I think we got to make about why we could compare it to the tulips for this in the like that it's a FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Johnny made money, Mary made money. How come we didn't make money?
We better jump in.
We better get in phase 2, phase 3, etc. Last time we bought 1, we better buy 2. Johnny bought 4. Look at how much money he made. We're so
Johnny
stupid.
bought 8 again.
Johnny bought 8.
Yeah.
Let's call some friends that are overseas and buy more. Like this is.
It kept on going.
But the difference with real estate, and we saw this in the States during the financial crisis, is the structure remains. Tulips have a life, okay? It's nice, it's pretty, and then it dies. Mm-hmm. You build a condo. You could say, look, I built it and I sold it. It was valued at $1,500.
Valued, yeah.
And now it's valued at $900. Well, but it has a value. There's a worth.
There's an intrinsic value.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what is that value? Is it the cost to build it? Is it the cost to the cost to replace it? There's different values, but the
to
point
replace
is,
it would cost $1,100 or $1,050.
perhaps,
Absolutely.
depending on the location and details and the time we are in this cycle.
Yeah.
But the point is, it has a value, unlike a tulip. So there is some kind of a floor here and a future value, because people are going to want to live there. Now, there's some that are being built that are in places where people probably don't want to live,
Or the layouts are so bad.
or the
no one
layouts are
wants
so
them,
which is a whole other problem.
Yeah. So you're right. And there's other things that went against them, because, when I talk about them, I'm talking about the people who bought a condo for $1,400 a square foot when they're selling for $925 now across the street. One thing that was going on at the time they bought is this unbelievable ramp up in immigration.
Yes.
That we would go to 1 million people a year, 1.2 million a year.
Yes.
And everybody just, well, they got to have someplace to live. I mean,
That's right.
This is the lowest cost option still compared with single family, compared with townhouses. So this, and everybody, look, this is the answer. And by the way, government supports it. Government loves density in Ontario, don't they?
Yes.
They love density. The denser, the better.
Yep.
But there's things in the background going on too. Like there was the incredible ramp up in development fees.
Yes.
So of that $1,200 a square foot, $1,400 a square foot, about 30% goes to government.
Yep.
In some way, shape, or form, which wasn't true in 2010. It was maybe 6% went to government, or 7% went to government. Then the incredible complexity of building, that just kept ramping up. I'm told that in Ontario, we have possibly the toughest building code in the world, the most energy efficient, the most safety first. It's more energy efficient than Norway's building code, and part of Norway's above the Arctic Circle, right?
Yeah.
So we've created cost factors.
And there's a whole NIMBY in it too. And NIMBYism, where it's not in my backyard. Oh, I don't want this 30-foot floor tower next to my residential house, right?
So it's got to be right in a certain location. It's got to be downtown. Yeah.
And the other part you mentioned about the immigration, the vast number of people coming into this country. A big part of that was the students, and
they don't buy condos
when they'll live in them. They'll rent them.
We'll see. Yeah.
Well, but I'm saying that was a big inflow.
That was the concept. That was a motivator.
And one of the concerns I have is how that's going to play out to the universities.
Sure.
We've seen Laurentian University already. They go bankrupt. That's crazy, right?
Wow.
And
we're going to see some of these community colleges go bankrupt.
Some of these community colleges, because and the government changed the rules by adding these masters. If you came for a master's degree, you got a permanent residence for 2 years after that. So it just now all that unravels, and these schools have built all these facilities, these structures.
And there's private enterprise went out and converted homes near the schools into student housing.
Yes.
Legally or illegally.
Correct.
Right? So yes, we have a perfect storm of disaster. We had, to your point, when you went and talked to that CMHC official, there's only two things to think about: rates and unemployment.
Yep.
So we've had a rise in rates.
Yep.
We've had an increase in unemployment, which is trending up. It's not leveled off in any way, particularly Ontario. A lot of this is a made in Ontario recession. Okay. Then we've got the immigration. As the government determined that this was becoming a phenomenally unpopular thing, that this incredible ripping off of foreign students with bullshit degrees, community college degrees, just taking advantage of people, charging really 5 times what they would charge a Canadian student. Then the temporary worker program, which is incredible, because that's all. You can blame the province on some of the students. The province is in charge of that relationship of issuing student visas.
Yes.
But the temp worker thing is all on the government, all on the feds, because the feds said, apparently Tim Hortons and Canadian Tire can't find any workers in Canada. There's none. There's no student workers. There's nobody who will ever work at these places. They can't hire anybody, according to this labor survey they've provided us.
Yep.
They provided us that they made it. The employer made it and said, there's no one to get this job. We need unskilled people from far away to come here to work for peanuts, and that's going to help us. So that turned out to be this unbelievable lie, And in reality, it was just Tim Hortons and Canadian Tire
Keeping their costs down.
They can sue me if they want, trying to just keep their costs down and make more profits.
Yeah.
So the government quickly realized this was a phenomenal public relations disaster.
Yep.
Like they thought the polls were bad back then. The polls are even worse now. And immigration, which Canadians traditionally held as a positive, that suddenly went negative because everybody looked around and said, this is nuts. I mean, this doesn't make sense. All these people are coming in who are being cheated and abused and taken advantage of. And now my kid can't get a summer job because they're temporary workers. We thought temporary workers were supposed to work in engineering, IT, and accounting. Okay.
Sure.
But now they're at Tim Hortons.
Well, or on the farmer's field.
Well, that one's been around forever.
That's
That one's
right.
been around for 30 years.
That's right.
But not the Tim Hortons thing. No, that was
Correct.
summer work. That was employment for, like the CNE has a jobs fair every year, except they didn't need any because they didn't need any students. They filled it out. Anyway, we know this. The government realized they were in trouble on immigration. They slashed it to nothing.
Yep.
And now it would appear that there'll be no immigrants for 2 years because the reality of life is that we draw permanent residents from people who are already here. There's a part, just like you suggested, if you got a master's degree, you're going to be a permanent resident. You're in, okay? So if you're here already, we don't need to bring any new ones in. So when we say we will have 350,000 new permanent residents next year, they're here already. So we don't need any new people for a couple of years, like none. Like the minister estimated negative 20,000 in population in 2026. So we've got this perfect storm, the high rates, growing unemployment, no immigration to speak of, and
no new construction because housing starts have gone down, collapsed.
they've collapsed.
And so that drives more unemployment.
It's the wheel, right? It's the wheel.
It's one of those things where everything happens at once at the wrong time.
And that's what we're experiencing right now.
And then you pile onto that what do banks do? They lend money to those that don't need money. They lend money when they are comfortable with the security.
Perfect covenants.
So if they run into a situation where the unemployment is higher, where the value of the house is not going upwards to the right,
It's going down.
staying flat or uncertain,
Yeah.
then they start saying, I know, Sally, you paid $1 million for this, but we'll lend you 80% of 900.
Because we can't, that's what the appraiser's telling us.
That's what the appraiser's telling us. And
Yeah.
So it becomes difficult to fix your problem because the banks start getting more stringent. And you know this, you're in this business. It's already happening. You can talk to that.
It is already happening. We've discussed it, and we've done podcasts about it. Little tiny tweaks to underwriting just eliminate a few more people. And this appraisal thing, we've previously talked about blanket appraisals on the show where if a bank is supplying the construction financing for the builder, for the developer, and they got a $500 million loan out, that there's a chance they might offer what's called a blanket appraisal, that if you bought from this builder, we will just take the purchase price on face value and we'll appraise the whole building and say all those purchase prices are fine. We don't have to have an individual appraisal, which favors the price being maintained, obviously.
But you can see why they do that.
Sure.
I mean, they're moving from one, hundreds of $1 million mortgage to $300 or $400 million mortgages for the individual units.
Some of whom may have no problem.
Some of them may have no problem. Some of them they'll work out, et cetera, et cetera.
But you don't have that $500 million problem anymore. That's
right.
Passed on to others.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
You've democratized it.
We've democratized the problem. So yes, that is, and I've said before, I don't necessarily even blame the banks. Okay?
And the thing also about real estate, even if we go back to the time of 1990 and 91, sure, it took some 10 years for prices to come back. But they eventually came back. And if you could hold
and pay your payments
and make your payments, you did okay.
Or you didn't hurt the bank.
Or you didn't hurt the bank. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's why time always plays here.
Time favors banks.
Yes.
Time favors banks. And it is
time doesn't favor the person who doesn't have a job and who's over their skis on their debt.
Time never favors the borrower, but it favors the banks. It's true. So But yet I don't think you or I are worried about the Canadian banks. We're not, are we?
No, not really. I mean, there's only 6 of them.
There's really only 6. Yeah,
They're gonna be okay, but credit losses are gonna go higher, and there's gonna be some banks that have more exposure than others, and that becomes a challenge.
For instance, sometimes people don't know this, but the Scotiabank doesn't have a single development loan. They don't have a single development mortgage to any one of these contractors or developers. Now, we also think, though, that mortgage growth isn't growing anymore in Canada, is it?
No, it seems to be more flatlining.
Yeah.
The growth has slowed, for
Growth
sure.
has slowed, and that may eventually, and just as you talked about the credit cycle, where underwriting gets tighter and tighter
Exactly.
as credit becomes
But that's also a function of the price not going higher.
that too.
Your mortgage book expands if all you did was, the 1-year mortgage came up for renewal, the house was valued higher, right? They extend you more credit.
If you want it,
In the past at least.
Yep. That's all changed. That's all changed.
You have to get approved, and that's not so easy.
But I'm Anthony. Anthony's business can pick stocks. I don't pick stocks. I don't even pay attention.
Yep.
But I do in my practice continue to believe that we don't have to worry about the Canadian banks. One of the big reasons I don't worry about the Canadian banks is I know this. It doesn't matter whether it's a liberal government, a conservative government, it could be a communist government. They will find a way to make sure the banks are okay if something really goes wrong.
That's right. But they've had a beautiful run here. They've had a hell of a run.
Unbelievably good run.
Surprised us, surprised many, I think, just how resilient they've been, and that there hasn't been any kind of significant hit. Now, there has been the hit to BMO, but that's largely a U.S. problem that they've had. On the commercial side, there's been a hit to BNS, which is largely as a result of the change in CEO, management team, the problems that they had in LATAM or Latin America.
Yeah, they have this big international component that
now they're winding down.
Yeah, well, they're going to try because some of the countries that they're in refuse to let them out. That's true of some of the Caribbean deals. The governments won't let them leave. Look, I don't really worry about any of them. I don't even worry about a $4 billion fine at TD. I don't think too hard about it. So
no, actually, I think that that's less than they make in a quarter.
I think so. Yeah,
and so they're going to be okay. It's a question of that one's just a holding period. You gotta hang on. But in the meantime, the Nationals, the Royals, the CIBCs, they've performed extremely well because they haven't gotten any trouble.
Yep. And it turns out that no matter how you slice it, RBC's purchase of HSBC might just work out over the long haul.
Seems like I think that's been a big win for them.
The one thing banks love is deposits, and HSBC had a ton of deposits,
and they had good customers as well.
Good customers, very very strong customers. Look, it was just a good deal. I think if TD hadn't have been thinking they could close their big U.S. acquisition, I think they probably would have been in the running for that. But it's timing again. Timing worked against them.
Yep.
So I'm not too worried about that. What do you think about the Canadian economy? Because I believe we're in the middle of an Ontario-led recession. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I got to preface this today. I did this on purpose. I always have interesting cufflinks like you have today. But today I have my Canadian... there
it is, right there.
That's a Canadian quarter there, famous. And, of course, this is our Veritas logo. So
there you go.
I'm just showing you that I am really Canadian, but I'm going to have to tell you the truth.
Yep.
We're concerned here. I think because, and it just goes back to what we just talked about, because we have such a reliance on real estate in construction and all the periphery. It's not just building the house. It's all the infrastructure associated with that and the ongoing support. There's no longer selling new appliances. There's no longer selling new kitchens and windows and all that stuff. So all that slows. And if that all slows, that brings with it the downturn and the unemployment. And that's when we have recessions. And look, I don't know how bad it's going to get, and I hope it's not bad. I think the type of downturns we now have are much more short-lived. because we have such a global economy that everybody's sort of feeling the shift at the same time. So any blip that we do have is going to be shorter. I don't know if we go as deep as 90. I don't think it'll take as long, but it's going to be painful. And the best advice I'd have now is deal with your debt. If you're having trouble making payments now, don't wait to make them more difficult. Call Ron. Call someone else that can help you with
our friends
your
in the
structures.
insolvency business feel they're going to have a record year next year.
That's right. And you're seeing insolvencies hit record highs. Yeah. Well, not record highs, but we're back at levels that we haven't seen, since just around the financial crisis.
But they are anticipating record highs in Ontario for
they
2025. I mean, it's interesting. A friend of both of ours, Scott Theriault,
yes,
has been talking lately about this enormous shift. And we're going to try to get Scott on the show. This interesting shift from no homeowners.
Correct.
Like he was at a point in 2021 and 22, insolvencies were way down because, there was a point there government was writing checks to everybody. But insolvencies were way down, but like homeowners had vanished. There were no homeowners going into insolvency in Ontario. And that's changed. And he has actually reported in the last few weeks on this growing number of people who've said, I bought these 2 pre-construction condos. I can't close. They're going to sue me. And I think I need to go bankrupt to avoid that litigation, which, by the way, is correct. Bankruptcy releases you from debt-oriented litigation. That's the way it works. Okay.
Yep.
And he said, never seen this before. Never in his entire career.
Typically, when we have periods of unemployment and insolvencies, it's the people, let's say, at the bottom. It's those that are renting. It's those that don't have assets that suffer, because those that have assets can securitize those assets, or get cash, or liquidate some and deal with their debt.
Yep.
The problem now is, a lot of the mortgages structures were issued such that, yes, they were 80% at the time of issuance, but then for every dollar that was paid down, an equal line of credit was offered to the purchaser. So now all of a sudden, yes, I paid down 5% of my mortgage, but then I just decided to add a line of credit and take that money out. So everyone kept it high. And why not? The rates are low. Everything's good. Next time the mortgage came up for renewal, I was able to take more equity out, and people live that way. And so I think that's something that now it's going to stop. I think what I said.
Oh, it's stopping. Yeah.
The main that we know we're going to get to start hitting a wall when house prices stop going up.
Anthony, when we both talk often about this incredible affection for real estate in Canada, particularly in provinces like Alberta, BC, and Ontario. But
even in Quebec, and out east, now it's spread everywhere.
Well,
right?
That's Toronto virus where it spread to Atlantic. Yeah, that's true. The virus, those people flew out there just to buy cheap houses to rent them out and raise the rents. But do you think some days that it detracts from productivity in Canada? That it detracts from a generation of people, young people who got out of university and said, well, you know what? I'm not going to become an entrepreneur. I'm not going to understudy at a restaurant and then open my own chain. I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm just going to sell real estate or flip real estate or work with a developer, which is not about invention. It's not about creating new businesses. It's not about exploring new industries. And it's not that productive, really. Do you think that's hurt this country?
100%. I think, and it's tied to the fact that we haven't built enough homes. We haven't built enough single-family homes. We haven't allowed density. Mm-hmm. You look at the Eglinton cross train. That's,
oh my God! Don't look at that.
Okay, and why is it that at the corner of pick one of the corners, you have no high rises? Like you're gonna have a subway station there, and there's no density along the entire of Eglinton. Yes, you have it at. You need density.
Build 5 stories. If you don't want to build a tower, build 5 stories.
But it makes no sense.
Yeah, that's true.
So that and then development charges have gone up so much. So what happens is, real estate becomes scarce because you're not building anymore. So that drives prices higher because you're bringing more people in, right? And then development costs are so high, drives prices higher, makes it uneconomic for people to build. And so, normally what really changes for the price of a house, right, or a structure is the land. That is what is scarce.
Yes, that's the scarcity.
We can build, we can get more bricks, we can get more cement. Yes, there's times when there's more demand or less demand leads to pricing.
But choice land is what has historically
had the biggest impact.
That's right.
So that's the key. I think if governments would make it such that development fees were really low, and that way we would have more building and encourage building in areas where there's going to be infrastructure, where there is already and where there's destined to be infrastructure. Then all of a sudden people will, there's things to build, and then there might be more incentives. And you need to also stimulate small business. We just have
we're crucifying small business.
If you you have a business here, you have employees, I have employees. Mm-hmm. We have to pay equal amount of CPP, equal amount of employment insurance. We pay also EHT, right? Employee health tax. Most people think OHIP is free.
Nobody knows what EHT is.
OHIP, you know that OHIP is free, right? OHIP's not free.
No.
Your employer is paying for your healthcare costs.
Paying a chunk, yeah.
Okay? And so that's a big hit.
Yeah, we've sort of throttled back small business because this is like the highest. Last year was the highest receiverships among small businesses in the history of Ontario.
And that largely came after that CERB check.
Yep.
That came to people, right? To corporations. It was up to $60,000, and you had to pay back $40,000.
Yeah, so better go bankrupt now. Better go into receivership so don't owe it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but that's the shame of it all. The shame of it that the real estate business has been very, very good to me. I can't complain in the slightest.
To all of us.
People have made a lot of money. It's provided good livings to people. But I'll be the first one to say, it's not like inventing something. It's not electric cars. It's not a rocket. It's not finding a better way to extract energy from Alberta, a cheaper, more effective, more efficient way. It's not a brand new idea. It's not a computer chip.
Yeah.
It's none of those things.
You're taking advantage of scarcity.
Yep. And leveraging it.
And leverage.
Yeah.
Because, and we talked about this a couple of times, it's in our industry, we talk about alpha and beta.
Yep.
Right? Alpha is outperformance that you drive, and beta is just what the market does. And so what we do is when we get things right, we say, well, we got it right because we're smart. We bought the house, we knew what we were doing, we bought 2 condos, made money on them.
Took the risk.
We're really smart.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure, you were smart and you had the wherewithal to make the decision.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we didn't have record immigration, if we didn't have the interest rates at all-time lows and unemployment staying low, that might have been a different story. And those issues that I just described were out of your control.
They're beta. They're the market.
Right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're not inventing AI. Well, apparently we did the research in Canada, and then because nobody wanted to invest in Canada, all the actual AI companies happened in the U.S. That's what happened.
You know that they say that today it takes longer to build a house. And
much longer.
It's amazing, and we don't have enough skilled labor to do it,
and we haven't found any more efficient ways to do it because we keep amping up our building code.
I've told many, I've taught at York for almost 14 years, and I do guest lectures. I love dealing. We hire students. It's a big part of our business, and I see the kids studying business or getting into studying in university, and I ask them, so why? What do you think you're going to do when you're done? Like, is there going to be a job? Are you doing this because there's going to be a job? They're not sure. They're really anxious. They're really concerned. And
are they looking for green cards? Are they looking for the U.S.?
Because the reality is you have to specialize.
Yeah,
you have to be unique. AI will replace those jobs that are just friction.
Yes.
If you take this pen, I buy it as it is, and I sell it to somebody else, that's friction. I can just do that online one day.
Yeah, and you are.
Correct. But if I take this pen and I turn it into something that writes on its own, now I added value. I can charge something for that.
True.
And, I think young people need to start thinking about trades. There's no shame in getting your hands dirty.
There's never any shame in it. Never.
I started out in the furniture business. My dad's been a furniture manufacturer all his life, and my sister runs that business for us, and we do renovation and construction, and it's a great business.
Anthony,
one of my daughters working in it too.
Anthony, we're running long,
all right.
But I want to say this: when you're talking to a very fine mind, it speeds by quick. And,
sure.
I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Thank you, Anthony, for coming. Really appreciate it, and it was a great pod. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron. It's a pleasure.
Thanks.
If you like the pod, well, don't just sit there. Go to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all the other ones and like the pod. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep being angry at mortgages and swearing about mortgages. Angry Mortgage could use your support.